sense that the PPP would have been confronted, the president would have been confronted with a style of activism that we had never seen in Guyana before in our time. I am not saying that it would not have happened before our time during the Browne era or whatever, but I'm saying in our time, in the late 90s, 2000s, and so on, you would have made a mark, and everything, you know, would have changed then because of your activism and your influence. Today, I welcome you to this program because we're going to have a normal, ordinary conversation. You will have the opportunity to speak. But today, I want to ask you this first question. We have been out of power 1 year now. The coalition, of course, would have been out of power 1 year now. The coalition, the PPP said the government would have been in office for 23 years prior to that. And the coalition would have served almost 5 years in office. Today, they are in the opposition. It appears as if the PPP is getting away with the excesses over that 1 year, just as if it were the 23 years. When you look as a political activist, someone who has suffered, someone who has been imprisoned for fighting for the rights of Guyanese in general, fighting for justice, you would have suffered 5 years in incarceration. When you look at the first year of the PPP in office, the excesses visited on Guyanese, and the opposition reaction, what are your thoughts, Mark Anthony Benshaw? I'm hearing you clearly, and the viewers can hear you clearly.
Okay, fair enough. So because we are broadcasting through another medium as well.
I'm hearing you clearly, and the viewers can hear you clearly.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. So we just had to double check some stuff, that we are broadcasting this your show live on the ground in Guyana as well via 107.1 FM.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that.
In answering your question, Norman, what we have seen over the past year since the PPP has been installed into office is the brazenness. The brazenness that we haven't seen. Of course, we know the track record of the PPP, but they have started with this brazenness because they know whoever their puppet masters are, those who would have been responsible for installing them. And I do say install because that's exactly what has happened, unless there is evidence that they can present publicly that can change my opinion of them being installed. They have gotten away with a lot of excessive. They have fired over 3,000 persons, removed them from their jobs. Those persons are currently on the breadline. They have been persecuting individuals, trumped up charges, whether electoral fraud charges, whether land, questionable land deal. We know that is basically fictitious. We know that they have been after individuals who have petroleum licenses through GEA. We know that they have been after some members of the coalition. We have been seeing it every single day. We also see that the extrajudicial killings have returned under the PPP. We also see the failure of them to combat this COVID-19 pandemic situation. As you may know, and lots of our listeners would know, that when the coalition got out of office by force, that is, there were about 23 or 24 persons who died as a result of this COVID-19 pandemic. To date, we have close to 800 persons have died. The regime has not shown any effort in combating this here. In fact, they have failed miserably. And in any other part of the world, the Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony, would have had to answer, and he would have had to submit his resignation almost with immediate effect. Mind you, the very Frank Anthony, the Minister of Health, has 3 advisors. 2 of those advisors are former ministers of health, and they are receiving millions of dollars in pay and duty and other sort of concessions, but they're not doing a good job. Now, in answering the second part of your question as to whether the opposition is doing enough to expose and to confront this illegitimate and installed regime, I think later down in your program, I will expand a little more on that. But I do think that if I were to give them a grade card right now, from a score of 1 to 10, I will give the main opposition a 3.5 or maybe 4, just to be nice with them.
And that's just to be nice with them. Mark Anthony Bishop, host of 107.1 FM. Of course, Bishop Radio is very popular. Political activist, freedom fighter. Mark served almost 5 years on remand in prison under the Jack Dios regime on trumped-up charges of treason, because the PPP had failed its activism, because the PPP recognized that outside of the then opposition, there was a lone voice, a lone Mandela, a lone Malcolm X, a lone Steve Biko in the Ghana context that was confronting them in a most serious way. He's here tonight on Voice of the Diaspora. I know you said you would go later on in the program, you will elaborate more. You have had experience, for the sake of our young viewers, you would have had experience in the political activism during the 23 years of the People's Progressive Party. That hegemony, extrajudicial killings were the order of the day. We are only into 1 year of the PPP civil government. For those who would not remember what transpired during those 23 years, when you were younger and really active. When you look back at that period under the PPP and you look at the 1 year, what similarities are there that says to the Guyanese people and says and say to us that we are heading down the same road that we were in the past 23 years? You talked about extrajudicial killings. You talked about the COVID pandemic and the government's handling. Of course, that is new. You talk about corruption and so on. What would you say when you compare them to now?
Well, we're seeing the signs of those dark days, and a lot of Guyanese do know when they see the signs of the dark days. We saw immediately following the installation of the PPP, the killings of the Henry Boys, the brutal slaying of the Henry Boys, followed by the questionable murder of Mr. Harish Singh as well. and then followed by extra other forms of killing. What is called hit squads seem to be out. A guy connected to Roger Khan was murdered in front of Palm Court. Lots of other execution style killings have returned in just about that year since the PPP has been installed into office. And the very people who assisted them in installing them are very quiet. The ABC, they're quiet about these extrajudicial killings. They're quiet about the execution style killings. They're quiet about the persecution of mainly persons who are perceived to be supporters of the opposition. We have witnessed the persecution of Mr. Mingo, of the GCOM, Ms. Roxanne Myers, Mr. Keith Lowenfield. We saw the people going after leaders of the PNC, Vola Lawrence, Carol Joseph, you name them. We saw them going after an honest man who was the chief executive officer of the Guyana Lands and Surveys, Mr. Trevor Benn. We saw them going after mainly persons of African descent who have acquired lands under the coalition. And when I say acquired land, legitimately. So all of these things we are seeing, the signs are there, and it's reminiscent of those dark days. If those things are not nipped in the bud almost immediately, then in another year, if these folks are still in office, looks as though, let's be realistic, that they are going to be in office for the next year, the signs certainly do not look good. And that is where, in answering your first question about the opposition, whether they're doing enough to combat or to confront these folks in the PPP regime, my humble and my honest opinion is that they're not doing much at all. What we're getting from the opposition, who should be out there confronting and standing up to these vagabonds in the PPP, we are not seeing that sort of activism, that sort of aggressiveness on the part of the coalition. And maybe that's why a lot of their supporters are angry. They're upset. They're frustrated because they want proper representation. And they're not seeing that for the most part. This doesn't mean that there are not a few opposition elements who are not working. Of course they are working. So I don't want to paint the entire opposition as though they're fast asleep, but a heck of a lot of them are fast asleep.
Mark Anthony Benshop here on Voice of the Diaspora. A lot of them are fast asleep. Look, let us be frank. There is a situation at the moment in which the opposition, since it would have assumed that position 1 year ago, would have been locked out from mainstream media. They would have been locked out from our national newspapers, from our newspapers in Guyana, from our mainstream television, and so on. The government and their supporters would have moved in that direction. The Kaichor News do not carry anything for the opposition. The Stabrook News do not carry much about the opposition. The Chronicle, which is state-owned, carries nothing about the opposition. And so the opposition was forced to move to social media because there weren't the resources to establish an equal media organ to rival our main news entity. Many social media platforms, like yourself and others, would have been filling that gap of holding the PPP accountable, of fighting for rights, whether it's holding the opposition accountable, and so on. Today we see members of parliament of the opposition on social media exciting their supporters with punchlines. They are in the ring, but they're not in parliament. They're in the ring, but they're not in the gutters fighting for the people. Nothing is wrong, mind you, Mark, nothing is wrong for our opposition MPs to have a social media presence. But when we see that appearing to be exclusive and nothing is happening on the ground where there's any accountability that we're holding the PPP accountable, but we are out there fighting, we can say to you in 1 year, this is what we would have done to assure you that we are fighting for the rights of our supporters. Today, we see MPs more on social media than on the ground, in parliament, in the real fight. How do you view that situation?
Well, you got to take into context that the members of parliament, most of them that we have in the opposition, are not real politicians. They're newbies, so to speak. They are, and I'm being very objective here without wanting to insult anybody.
You can speak your mind on this program.
Thank you. I am known for speaking my mind. As I've gotten a little old now, I'm an old man now. I couldn't imagine that I'm saying that, being a bit facetious though. The politicians of the day that we have there in parliament are newbies. They're fresh to this. Almost 95% of them, and you look around parliament, they're not fighters from the trenches. They don't have a background of fighting or activism or even political works and whatever other stuff that comes with it. And so they now have to fight to create a space. I don't want to say to be relevant, but to create a space to make it appear that they are working. And while some of them are indeed working, I'm not here to paint all of them with the same brush. And so those who can't function on the ground, those who can't make that representation on the ground, and sadly, I want to say this, that 95% of them can't function on the ground. So to make it appear that they are functioning, I think here is where the social media platform comes in. And this is not to discredit those who have a social media platform. I think it's playing a good part. However, it is more than just the social media platform. The people didn't vote, they didn't elect individuals to be social media politicians. Or in fact, I didn't vote for them either to be social media politicians. All of us voted for them to represent our interests, to represent the interest of the people on the ground. While social media platform plays a role, I think people want to see them with real boots on the ground. They want to visit the people out on the quarantine in Region 6 to address their issues on the flood relief, the flood grant corruption and all these things, the COVID-19 cash grant corruption, the back to school educational grant corruption. People want to see them on the ground in communities talking about these issues. People want to see them taking the lead in doing these sort of things. And for the most part, they have failed. They have not done that. Now, some of them might say, oh, they visited a little area now and then. You know, that is not sufficient. It is not enough. And then when they're confronted about these issues, they say, well, look, all of us or all of them can be on the ground doing the same thing. A heck of a lot of them are doing research and they're working behind the scenes and so forth and so on. I just want to make this point very clear, and especially to some of them who might be watching. People didn't vote for them to become researchers. People didn't vote for the members of parliament for the coalition to work in the back room and to be researchers and these sort of things. People voted for them, and I do hope they're watching. People voted for you guys to go out there, to take the lead, to stand up and to represent the interest of the people, whether in Region 6, whether in Region 10, whether in Region 4, wherever you are. That is why people voted. And I'll give the mic back to you for your further questions.
Mark, that was profound. That was really profound, and it was very straightforward. It was candid, and I'm happy that you said that, because what social media commentators like ourselves should be doing is what opposition MPs seem engaged in while they're not focusing on the actual work on the ground. And I'm happy that you have been lucid in your expression in relation to that point. Look, you're a seasoned politician, you're a seasoned activist, you are actually a seasoned media man. You are in the echelons of Adam Harris, a number of renowned media people in Guyana. Enrico, Wilford, Gordon, Mosley. You are right up there with them, if not in your own class. You would have worked with Fred Kissoon during the struggle to remove the PPP of 23 years ago. Today, Fred Kissoon onslaught on African Guyanese leaders and politicians is known across the country. Freddie is a friend of mine. I have tremendous respect for Freddie, and we get along. But today's onslaught on yourself, on Lincoln Lewis, on Dr. David Hines, on Dr. Alyssa Trots, on UC Kwayana, and almost every African Guyanese in the political spectrum. Almost every one of them would have felt and is still feeling the brunt of Freddie's pen and his opposition. You have worked closely with Freddie, you've been locked up together, you've been in activism together. Is he justified in what he is? Is he justified in the narrative that he's propagating today?
Well, Freddie has to know what mission he's on. The people are not stupid. The people know what mission Freddie's on. The people have seen that 90-degree U-turn. The people understand what Freddie is up to. And so the people, and I don't want to spend much time.
What is the up to?
Oh, pardon me? I think people are seeing a Freddie that they may have already saw we even before us seeing the real Freddie, if that makes much sense. And so I'm saying that what we are seeing is somebody who is basically finding time. He probably has a lot of extra time to lash out at every and anybody, especially part of his objective is to discredit people who would have made a tremendous amount of contributions the years in Guyana. Those people who have made contributions economically or otherwise are not perfect. And I hope Freddie Kissoon doesn't think he's perfect, because God knows he's not perfect. You know what I mean? And I think lots of people who know Freddie know that Freddie is far from being perfect. He is far from being an angel. So whilst he tries to create that impression that he is, he chops down other people who would have contributed meaningfully in the country. A Lincoln Lewis. Lincoln Lewis has a track record far more than a Freddie Kissoon, but yet Freddie wants to target Lincoln. Dr. David Hines, with his track record of activism as well, he wants to chop down David Hines. UC Kwayana, who has been years before Freddie Kissoon, he wants to chop down UC Kwayana. He wants to chop down Dr. Mostly the black folks he wants to chop down. He wants to discredit them. He wants to
Dr.
make
Vincent
it.
Adams.
He wants to make it appear as though he is the only hero, and there's no other hero. He wants it to appear that his track record is so smooth, and everybody else is soily. Everybody else has a problem, except Freddie Kissoon. And those of us who would have spent time with Freddie, we understand Freddie. At least I do. I have seen a lot of faults over the years. I have also seen Freddie standing up also, even though apart from those faults, I have seen Freddie standing up and defending, those who wanted people to stand up and defend them, those who would have been persecuted under the PPP when a lot of people were running into hiding. So I also know that side of a Freddie Kissoon, but I just can't understand, and I wouldn't accept the fact that he is chopping every single Black leader down. And that is where, for me, I have a problem with Freddie Kissoon and his attack on Black leaders. Those Black folks, those Black leaders can defend themselves as well. But Freddie's on a mission. We all know what that mission is. The other day, Freddie called me a coward. And I had to smile because I thought I was at the National Cultural Center watching Nothing to Laugh About, or one of those comedy shows. This is the same coward that whenever there was a protest in Guyana and whenever it got late, it is the same coward that he wants to follow him home. So I must follow him home, but yet I must drive home in the dark all by myself. It is the same coward that whenever he is under attack by the PPP, the first one to reach out to assist him and to stand up and to say what the PPP regime and their supporters were doing to him was wrong. This is the same coward who put his life on the line for a Freddie Kissoon and others. This is the same coward, according to Freddie Kissoon, when we were in the Brigdam lockups for 3 nights. I actually sheltered him. I actually protected him. I actually defended him. And I actually ensured that he was safe. This is the same coward when the police officer separated us, put us in, of course, 2 separate cells. Less than half hour after, he was bawling down, calling for the police to come in. I don't want to make our listeners laugh, but he was, police, 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 come, come, come. But he wanted us to be back in the same cell. I mean, I don't know what his intentions were for he and I to be in the same cell together when it's dark, but it wasn't up my alleyway. But the point that I'm making, this is the same coward that he wanted to be there to protect him, to comfort him when he was crying out, when he gave up. He was in that lockup at Brigdam. He gave up. He said he's done with the struggle. It is not worth it. He's out of there. But yet publicly, he's going to write and want to make all of us who have contributed in whatever way as African Guyanese, that we are not worth anything, and that Ben Sharp, of all person, is a coward. When they threw the mess in his face, for days I had to stomach being around Freddie Kissoon and all of these things. So I think that Freddie has to rethink. I think he has to rethink. He needs to apologize to all of the Black leaders that he has disrespected, every single one. And probably let's take it from there. But I think he has overstepped.
But let's bring some quick clarification to why Freddie would have made that shift, or why he professed to making that shift. He is claiming, of course, that most Black leaders did not condemn what he would have extrapolated as blatant election rigging by the coalition. He is saying that he fought in a struggle with yourself, Dr. Hines, on a revered people like U.C. Quayan, or great leaders like U.C. Quayan and others, Milton Green and all of them. But since the 2020 election, what he called election rigging, he saw that many of you would not have spoken out against it. And that is why he took that position to not only condemn African leaders and activists like yourself, but to continue on that sojourn to condemn our politicians in the opposition and to support in some ways what the People's Progressive Party is doing today.
Well, I think, Mr. Browne, we have to be fair. Freddie Kissoon's truth suits Freddie Kissoon. He cannot expect that his opinion of the March 2020 elections should be shared by others. And because others do not share the same point of view with him, then therefore those individuals are wrong and they should become enemies of Freddie Kissoon or the state. Now, I have said this on numerous occasions, that based on the evidence that I am seeing, that all of us have seen thus far, in my opinion, it points in the direction of the PPP having to be involved in more electoral skullduggery than what they're accusing the coalition of doing. We saw what came out of the recount process. We saw the 47 plus ballot boxes. That's equivalent to maybe close to 12 or 13,000 votes. And that's just in one area. We saw the thousands of ballot boxes that were tampered with, mainly in PPP areas. We heard the returning officer, someone by the name of Jack Deere over in region number 3, as Mr. Ganesh Mahipal, the MP, would say, that when they called, they saw certain questionable activities being, at that time was happening. They never did anything. All of these things they've ignored. We heard about what happened in Region 1, I believe, or Region 2, when the returning officer didn't send in the poll books. All of these things were absent. And again, they all happened in PPP stronghold. Now, those are the evidence. If we were to look at all of the evidence, it's pointing in the direction of the PPP being the masters of rigging, especially of the 2020 elections. Now, all we have been hearing about the PPP is something Mr. Mingo allegedly did on elections night or afternoon at the GCOM headquarters. That is all we're hearing. We're not seeing the evidence. They said that the SOPs were wrong. And for 1 year, they've been jumping up and saying that the APNU-AFC coalition didn't want to show their SOPs. Now, it's been over a year now. All of those SOPs are in the hands of the PPP. They are now controlling those SOPs. And if the coalition had rigged the elections, the simple question, don't you think the PPP would have already found a way to expose the SOPs of the coalition? They would have done so. The fact that they haven't done so raises a lot of question marks for me, red flags. The other thing quickly, Mr. Browne, is that prior to them being installed in office, they were jumping on the mountaintop and saying, let's take this to an elections petition. Let the elections petition deal with this matter. They were all happy. They were excited, at least so they appeared, as they were telling people that they want an elections petition. But now let's look at the elections petition as they were brought before the court. Who is the party? Which party is so aggressive in the form of not wanting the elections petition to be heard? It is not the coalition. It is the PPP. And therefore, this is the billion-dollar question. Why is the PPP afraid of the elections petition? Why are they afraid of the elections petition? Why can they have people see a sneak preview of the SOPs? They're done with the SOPs. They're no longer talking about that. So all of these things and more, I say, makes me believe that the PPP has a lot to hide and that the PPP is the culprit rigging of the elections. Now, Freddie Kissoon can jump on whatever mountaintop he wants. He can dance the chutney dance. He can dance Humbayaya. He can dance masquerade. He can do whatever. He can even do the break dance in talking about people like us who are embracing rigging of elections. No one is embracing the rigging of elections. People are saying, let us be fair. If they're claiming that the coalition has rigged the elections, fair enough. The matters now are before the court. Let the elections petition be heard and let us see the evidence. Freddie can't want to force his belief system onto us. And because we refuse to accept that without any evidence, we have now become the bad guys. We are supporting rigging. We are supporting all sorts of things. But hey, Norman, your viewers, your listeners are way smarter than that. They know who the real riggers are.
They know who the real riggers are. Mark Bench up here on Voice of Diaspora. Finally on Freddie Kissoon.
Oh, man, please. Can I take a sip of water before we still? Because look, the amount of time we're spending on Freddie, we have far better things. Bora gone up, coconut gone up, coconut oil gone up, cost of living gone up, unemployment gone up.
Dealing with that.
Oh, gosh. Go ahead.
Ganesh is dealing with that.
Yeah.
But Freddie would have said that during the years of your activism, and I really want you to respond to this because it may be in public very soon. Freddie is saying that during the years of your activism, your mayoral quest during those days, that you would have been funded by shady characters, criminal elements, so to speak, would have funded your campaign. You would have been in association with people that were, were not of good character, and that you would have acquired stuff, buildings in the capital city and so on. Were you during the days when everyone would have seen you as a political activist, as someone who was there in the ghetto, in the streets, were you ever compromised by shady operators in there? Were you ever funded by people that were not above board in their business ventures?
Well, I don't know about that. I certainly, and sometimes when people make those sort of accusations, you wonder whether they're looking in the mirror. And I don't know if there's anyone at all can come forward, any person as you have described can ever come forward and with evidence to say such and such. It's probably the first time that I'm hearing it. Probably wouldn't be the last time. But these are individuals, for example, coming from a Freddie Kissoon. Freddie Kissoon has associated himself with me for many years. I don't know if he's including himself in that process. Freddie Kissoon and I and others, we have gone out to lunch almost every day. And Freddie saw the struggle of which a lot of us went through in even having to pay for a lunch, but yet we had to. The only one that was actually working at that time and getting a monthly salary was Freddie Kissoon. Sometimes we wish that Freddie Kissoon would show a heart and push his hand in his pocket and treat for a lunch or purchase a bottle of water and these sort of things. But one of the things that I am going to say that during the struggle, it wasn't an easy road. And I'm not going to sit here and go through that process, but it wasn't an easy road at all. This is the first time that I'm hearing anything about Benchop acquiring buildings and all these different things. This is the first time that I'm hearing these sort of things. And I think it comes with the territory. I am not upset. It comes with the territory. But maybe folks like Freddie Kissoon are probably mistaken me for the PPP that is notorious in terms of being in bed with persons of questionable characters, whether it be drug lords, whether it be phantom squad killers, the same people that were after Freddie Kissoon that we had to stand up and defend. because it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy there with the threats from drug lords, the threats from black clothes police, and all these different things. So even during those periods, as much as the police, almost all of the commissioners of police were after me. If these are things that were known to them, I'm almost pretty sure that I probably would have been in handcuffs and all these different things. And so I just brushed those things, those allegations and accusations by a few questionable individuals who themselves might be guilty of what they wish to accuse others of doing.
Well, I wish you could elaborate on that, but let us move on. We saw recently our president, our Ghana's president, of course not my president, I wish to make that clear, at the United Nations talking about reparative justice. Of course, the news would have been on social media in relation to his pronunciation and in relation to the mistakes he would have made. But many believe that the message that was sent there was embarrassing to the opposition and to the coalition, in the context that here is the PPP that we are accusing of trampling on the rights of Africans in the past and now, that it is the PPP that is at the international level making representation for reparations for African Guyanese coming out of the slave trade. When you listen to the PPP, in my estimation, before I allow you to answer, in my estimation, I think that the PPP is slapping the coalition in its face for not making such representation, like they would not have made many other representations on behalf of their constituencies and supporters, primarily African Guyanese supporters. And I honestly believe that the PPP has no interest in seeking reparative justice in any sorts, in any way for, African Guyanese who are children of slaves. But it comes to the point in which people are saying, why is it that the PPP today must go to the United Nations to seek reparative justice for African Guyanese when we didn't do that while we were in office? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I wouldn't say that the coalition didn't do anything as it pertains to that reparation. They've always made representation of that, and so I wouldn't agree that they haven't done anything. In fact, they have done a lot, far more than what the 23 plus years when the PPP were in office. They didn't give a damn about the people. They didn't give a damn about reparation. They didn't give a damn about whatever it is that they are spreading propaganda about now. It's just talking points for them. All they were concerned about, the politics that they believed in, is political orgasm. That's the sort of politics they believe in. And we're seeing that every single day. So when they sit and they talk about reparation for Black folks and all these things, it's just talking points. At the United Nations, they feel that it is something that is good. It makes them look good. But the hypocrisy is right there for the world to see. We all know about the hypocrisy. How can you talk about reparation for Black folks when you're deliberately strangulating mainly Black communities throughout Guyana? Economic genocide that you have practiced for the 23 years. For the 1+ years that you've been in office now, you have been persecuting mainly persons of African descent. You have been targeting mainly persons of African descent through their goons in the Guyana police force for extrajudicial killings. You have been targeting mainly African persons in the public service, and all these different things that you have been doing. You have been basically targeting mainly persons in African communities for this forced vaccination. All these things you have been doing. But yet they have the nerve to sit at the United Nations and talk about reparation for Black folks when they treat Black folks worse than second-class citizens, probably close to a slave-like treatment out in Guyana. Where they believe that Black folks can only be given jobs to become trench cleaners, to go in Alboistong or in East or in West or somewhere in Linden and dig drains and dig gutters. So if they give somebody that is close to them $10 million or $5 million contract, it is just to clean drains. That is what they believe. They believe that when people are selling dog foods, that is enough. So Black folks can own land. Black folks can have proper jobs in Guyana. So the point is, Mr. Browne, the evidence is quite clear that the PPP regime doesn't have respect for Black folks. That is why it is painful to hear Irfan Ali and his cohorts there at the United Nations to talk about reparation. What are you talking about reparation when for months they have been spiting the mayor of Georgetown and not even paying the man his little stipend every month? What do you talk about reparation when you don't even want to give an increase to public servants? You don't want to give an increase to teachers and all these different things. When you've been spiting the bauxite workers and all of these things, but yet they want to talk about reparation. Come on. Hypocrites.
Mark Bishop here, 107.1 FM. That's Mark Bishop's radio. He's also on social media, the Mark Bishop Show, straight up. One of the most seasoned political activists and radio hosts in Guyana. Look, we're wrapping up now. We've got 9 minutes. And I want to give you the platform to say what you want to say to the Guyanese people. But I wanted to ask this question. Someone did, Charlie Ali said, Norman, stop being so naive. You believe the sham of a speech from my fraud about reparation should be discussed. Of course, I said that I believe that it's not in the interest of the PPP to seek reparation. I think it's, but it's trying to embarrass the coalition where, in my estimation, not much hasn't been done. Mark would have clarified here on that point. But the whole question is here, Mark. Look, we've seen the death of the Henry boys, the gruesome killings of the Henry boys in Irish, as you rightly said, at the beginning of the rule of the PPP in 2020. There has been no justice. There has been no justice. We saw recently, a week or two ago, the brutal slaughter at the hand of the police of Mr. Oren Boson in the confines of his home. We see police arresting lawyers and politicians, locking them up and, intimidating them and charging them and so on. There is no action from the collective of the opposition. Where are we at? Where are we going? What is happening?
Well, what is happening is exactly, I've noticed a comment from Sean Anthony Ben. Well, Sean, good evening to you, all the way there in Guyana. Sean Anthony Ben is saying, let reparation begin right there in Guyana. And as I've outlined earlier, that the evidence is humongous, that the PPP regime doesn't respect persons of African descent. That's a fact. And for them to sit there and to pretend that the United Nations, that they are concerned about reparation. If they are concerned about reparation, as Mr. Sean Anthony Ben just said in his comment section, then let it begin at home. You cannot talk about reparation for persons of African descent, doing the political dance at the UN, but in your own country that you're pretending to be fighting for persons of African descent, you're persecuting them, you're taking away their lands, you're jailing them. You have your goons in the Guyana police force who feel as though that they have that green light right now to go out and harass people and execute people, whether through the SWAT team or whatever other team. That is exactly what they feel, that they are on top now. They can do whatever that is necessary. Now, the question is, how can these guys be stopped? They can be stopped if the people decide to stop them, if we have a more aggressive approach by the opposition members of parliament, the leadership of the coalition. And sadly, the leadership seem to be more focused on each other and fighting each other and spending hours gossiping about each other and fighting each other down via their little chat groups, whether WhatsApp chat groups or whatever chat groups that they have. They spend more time fighting each other as opposed to fighting the PPP. The PPP is very weak at this point in time. Even their own support base know that, because since they have gotten into office over a year ago, what exactly have they done? What exactly have they done for the people? Instead, we are seeing these, some of them who are half dead. They suddenly caught themselves back. They gain a little weight. They're buying little fancy clothes. They're doing their hair now. They get billions of dollars in the budget. And so that is exactly, they're looking after themselves. But if these folks in the coalition can look at the bigger picture, stop fighting amongst themselves at Congress Place, or maybe at the office of the leader of the opposition, or amongst themselves as MPs to see who can get more likes and who can get more following on social media and all of these things, that doesn't win politics. It doesn't win the hearts of the people. While some of those things might be good, and I respect that, and I support that as well, the fight is actually back into your communities. How do you win their hearts again? How do you bring your support base together? How do you get persons who are sitting on the fence to come over on your side? How do you get the PPP supporters to know that in the next general and regional elections that voting for the PPP is a waste of time? You can't get these things by sitting amongst themselves in Congress Place and other places and fighting and tearing each other down. That, for me, is a personal frustration. I want to see strong leadership within the coalition, because they are right now the only alternative if elections were to be held this week or next year, unless a third force pops its head up. Now, if they continue on this track, then they should not be surprised if a third force, a strong third force, pops its head up. But if they don't want that third force to pop its head up, they've got to do what is right now. And most of those MPs have to get out of their air-conditioned offices. They have to hit the streets. They got to talk to their support base, whether in East Rumbelt, West, whether in South, whether all over Georgetown, whether in Agricola, whether in Linden or wherever. They have to go back out on the ground. They can't make an excuse to say COVID-19 is a problem and therefore they can't. It's prohibiting them from hitting the streets. And not just protesting. I'm talking about reaching out to your support base. A lot of them jumped on a plane. They went to Brooklyn. They protested. They did everything. They were, yeah. But that sort of activism was good in Brooklyn. We need to see those sort of things in Guyana as well. And not once a week or once a month. And then 6 months after that, we don't see them. We don't hear from them. And then when we try to call them out on social media, they get all vexed. They get all sensitive. You know, it is as though they're giving the impression that a Ben Shop or a Browne or others might be against them because we call them out. We call them out, at least I call them out, because I want to show some sort of love. And maybe that's the only way that we will get their attention, if we say most of them aren't doing anything. Take, for example, I will name maybe 2 or 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
Crime is on the increase. Extrajudicial killings are on the increase. Police corruption on the increase. The manipulation of the hierarchy of the Guyana police force by the PPP is obvious. Where is the shadow minister of Home Affairs, Ms. Geeta Chandan? Now, Geeta is a friend of mine. I like her. But to call her out like this publicly, to say that the reason that she has been selected or elected as an MP is to represent the interest of the people. We need to see more of these MPs. They cannot operate behind closed doors or in the AC offices. The former Minister of Education, Dr. Nicolette Henry, where is she during this whole controversy with Priya Manik-Chan and the Ministry of Education? We need to see more of Nicolette Henry. And if these people are not up to the task, if they do not have the political strength to do what they have been placed there to do, well, maybe the time has come for them to step aside or be removed and give it to people who have the energy, who have the passion, and who understand, people who understand politics and the nature of going after their support base. They just don't. Some of them just don't have it. And I have no apologies for saying this. They just don't have it. The leadership, that's another question. Maybe for some other time.
Of course, we've gone over time, but Mark, we still have a few minutes left. I mean, you're a special guest, and I have to ask you this question. I'm glad that you raised that point in relation to the various shadow ministers, not only the shadow minister of Home Affairs, but all the shadow ministers should be confronting. The shadow minister of Health should be vocal. The shadow minister of Labor should be vocal. We're not seeing that. I believe that I believe in the coalition still. I support the coalition still. I've called them out a lot, but we're wrapping up now, and I have to ask this question. Aubrey Norton is my choice to lead the party. Of course, as a seasoned political activist yourself, would have thrown your hat in the ring years ago to run for political office through your political party. Aubrey Norton is my choice to be the leader of the party. But today we're seeing a kind of lull in relation to even, and this is what is upsetting me. And in these last minutes, I want us to be passionate in our conversation to wrap up. What is affecting me is that our supporters are against the ropes. They're crying out for leadership. The PPP is trampling on us. We would believe that our opposition politicians will try to rush to put the house in order, so to speak. No Congress, no PNC Congress. No identification of a leader or a leadership team to begin the work to arrest the excesses of the PP. That we can say, well, Aubrey is the leader now, or Van West is the leader now. This is what we have to work with. This is what we must do. These are the people we have to hold accountable. Like how you said, Geeta, Shadow Minister of Home Affairs, what is she saying? What is she doing? I tried calling Geeta several times. She's a girl after my own heart. She refuses to answer. And maybe she's busy. I'm not hitting her. But this is what is happening. It seems like things are being taken for granted. No, at the moment, no urgency in holding Congress. The opposition is in disarray. The PNC house is not in order. The AFC is in trouble. Of course, we got Sherrod there in the ring, but in the AFC, we don't know what is happening. Whether there is an AFC still since Sharon Das left. Elaborate for a few minutes as we wrap up, and this is where we're wrapping up. On these points, what are your thoughts on those points?
Well, you have put a lot of points out there. It's where to begin with. And I think the grassroots people, the people that matter the most are those who go out and vote, those who are on the ground, those who are in the trenches, so to speak. And oftentimes those folks are being taken for granted. And there will come a time when the people are going to start to respect those ordinary folks, those grassroots people, that politicians, irrespective of their political parties, come elections time, and those politicians, those political leaders behave like prostitutes, and they try. And this, I'm not knocking prostitutes, mind you. I'm not doing that at all. Um, and if Jack Deere and Irfan them are watching, I'm not knocking prostitutes at all, political prostitutes. But that is how the people, the grassroots people feel. They feel as though they're being used. And I'm speaking directly to coalition supporters. Coalition supporters, for the most part, believe that they're being used or have been used by the leadership of the coalition, that the time that they only care about these people is during elections time. When elections are over, people hardly care about them. Of course, we can say that during the 5 years of the PPP, the coalition, that we have seen a lot of developments throughout the country. Yes, we've seen roads, telecommunications, and all these different things. But the people were looking for more. They want a sense of appreciation, a sense of respect, to know, to let those members of parliament, to let the ministers, those who were under the coalition ministers, to know that they matter, their vote matter. And the people weren't getting that impression, because a lot of those APNU, AFC ministers were on cloud nine when they were in office. They will pass the communities that actually voted for them. They will pass the people that actually voted for them. Now that they're out in office, it is difficult for them to go back into most of those communities to tell the people that they love them. And now the people know that. Now, what the coalition needs to do at this time is to go back into the drawing board and say, how do we approach back our support base with some fresh faces, people who are passionate about their struggles, their problems on the ground, and try to find a way to make up with the people, to say, yes, mistakes were made, but we also did a heck of a lot of good compared to what the PPP did for 23 years, right? These are things that they should walk into communities, their support base, and talk to the people, have a frank discussion, have a straight up discussion with these people. They can't expect to just barge in and believe that nothing has happened. Let us kiss and make up. Again, the grassroots people are way smarter than that. The AFC style of politicking, I don't know, we see some sound bites from some of the leadership of the AFC, but I think they need to be more visible. I think they need to put boots, they need to go on the ground, they need to go to visit people in Blackbush Polder, they need to go visit people other places around, not just coming on social media to give sound bites and feel that that sound bite is enough. It is just not enough. In answering your question as it pertains to the leadership of the PNCR, I do believe that because I'm not a member of the PNCR, I'm not a member of the PNCR, but I voted once or twice for the PNC and the coalition, including the AFC, because I want betterment for the country, a betterment for all of the citizens of the country, not for any personal thing as it pertains to me. Because if I were to take things personal, then maybe I would have been a bitter man like Freddie Kissoon. Because under the coalition, they, for the most part, a lot of them.
I thought you were off, Freddie Kissoon.
A lot of them didn't see me as a friend. A lot of them didn't see me as a friend. A lot of them didn't treat me as though I'm a friend of theirs. And that's a fact. But my support, my continued support for the coalition has nothing to do with any personal gains or any personal anything, and that will make me bitter and kick them to the curb. I have taken a position to continue to support the coalition because of the interest of the country. There were some good ministers, there are some good members of parliament, but then again, there were some who were arrogant, who should not have been there. Some of them were square pegs in wrong hole, that didn't give a damn about the people. Some of them ignored the Judas when they were told that they were a Judas who was going to walk into parliament and vote against them. They ignored all of these things. It is as though they were always right and anybody else was just wrong. To hell with a Ben Sharp, to hell with a Lincoln Lewis, to hell with a Browne, to hell with a Dr. David Hines, to hell with a Christopher Ram, to hell with a Freddie Kissoon. That was their mentality. But I am not a bitter guy. I'm not. I will continue to support them, yes, until further notice. And so if I feel that members of parliament ought to be going out there and do more for the people, I will continue to say that. However, there are some who are working. I want to show respect to those individuals. They are on the ground. There's a Coretta McDonald. There's a Ganesh Mahi Paul. There's a Dinesh Jai Prashad. And there are a few others who are working. I may not call all of their names.
Annette Ferguson.
Exactly. But then again, there are a lot of them who, when we ask where they are, we are told that they are behind. All of us can't come out. Some got to be behind. Look, let me say this, doing research. Let me say this. The people didn't elect those members of parliament to do research or stay in the back room and do whatever they're doing. The people elected them to go out into those communities and stand up, even if it calls for them to be locked up or to be arrested and all these sort of things. It comes with the territory. If they can't face that sort of heat, well, then they shouldn't be in the kitchen as members of parliament. Their job is not to sit down and say, oh, the people aren't coming out. Look at those years when I protested a lot of times all by myself. When I had my placard alone and I look around, it was lonely. It was very, very lonely. I must say that. But I never gave up and say, oh, the people ain't coming and me going back tomorrow or whatever. No, if they lock me up, I'm back out on the streets again. If they lock me up, I'm back out on the streets again. And those are the sort of members of parliament that people want to see. People who are ready to fight. Not when people say boots on the ground, and then when you're looking around for boots, you're not seeing nothing. All you see, you're not even seeing the lace, the shoe lace, the boots lace. You're not seeing anything. And, I hope that they could take these sort of criticisms in terms of, in a constructive way. There's no malice, there's no hatred towards any of them. But sadly, Mr. Browne, it seems as though they see us also as the enemy because we refuse to join with what they are saying. And they're not looking at that we are independent voice. We have an independent voice. They are looking that if they sing a trade wind song, not a blade of grass, they want all of us to sing the same song. And if somebody sings a different song, they automatically have that person as an enemy. And the coalition members of parliament, they need to stop this. They need to stop wasting their time on WhatsApp group, talking this body name, chatting about this body, chatting about that, being sensitive and all these things. Go out there, put on your boots and do your job. Briefly before I go, a lot of them do their job part-time because they have other jobs. And they're getting paid $250,000 a month. $250,000 Guyana a month
as MPs
with benefits, far more than what some of them are being paid on their other job. But they're treating their other job with more respect than they are treating their job as elected officials. Right? So at some point in time, maybe our elected officials will have to be elected directly by the people. And that is when they're going to start taking their job seriously. and they have to get their MP's office in Linden. So you know you go directly to the MP. And if that MP, whether in Region 10, whether in Region 6, Region 5, Region 4 or 3 or wherever, if that MP doesn't do his or her job, come next elections time, the people have that power to vote them out of office. So members of parliament.
Mark,
yeah.
Mark Bishop, we're closing now. We have really gone over time. We've got 1 minute. Aubrey Norton is my choice to lead the coalition because I believe that he is perhaps most capable at this juncture to seeing the back of the People's Progressive Party at the next elections. Aubrey is my choice. He has my support. Do you have a choice whom you wish to see lead the party, lead the coalition into victory at the next elections? 1 minute.
Well, you know, they haven't set a date. All we're hearing is by the end of this year. That's all we're hearing. And I do believe that whenever that date is called, whenever they do decide on a date, there may be other persons coming into the race. I don't know those other persons as yet. We don't know who else is going to be in that race. And so it is difficult for me to, at this point in time, to say whether I support X, Y, or Z person. I've known Aubrey Norton over the years. I have known a lot of the others over the years as well. Dr. Richard Van West Charles, Ms. Paula Lawrence, who is the chairman of the party. She hasn't yet indicated whether she's in the race or not. But I'd prefer to sit and wait. And when that time is, when that date is announced, closer to that date, then based on all of the candidates that I'm seeing, then I will be able to share my opinion as to who I think will be the best leader based on my opinion. But as of now, I have absolutely, and I want you to read my lips, Norman, I have absolutely no horse in the race. And I wanted to say I wanted to say it in my Philip Bino voice. Good evening to Philip if he's watching.
I absolutely want to say that it's been a great pleasure and honor to have you on this program. You are an exception in relation to the struggles as an activist. You are what we call a part of Guyana's history when we would talk about modern activism, when we would talk about modern, when those in the years before would have talked about Critchlow, Hubert Nathaniel Critchlow, and they would have talked about, Coffee and Accra and all these people. In the 21st century and in the late 20th century, Mark Bishop, of course, is perhaps the foremost activist that we have had. And so it is a great pleasure, it is an honor, it's a privilege to have you here on the Voice of the Diaspora.
Norman, not to cut you, I'm smiling because I noticed a comment saying, Deanne Joseph is saying that my response tells that I don't want Aubrey. Again, I am saying that I have...
But I suspected that too.
Right. I have absolutely... You see, there is where people jump to conclusion. I am simply saying that before I arrive at a decision, I need to see whether there will be other persons in the race. And based on those individuals, I'm looking for qualities, right? It doesn't mean that some of these guys who are already in the race do not share some of the qualities that I'm looking for. But I want to see more. And if there are more persons, then closer down, I'll be able to say to the listeners that I believe if it's Dr. Van West Charles, if it's Ganesh Mahipal, if it's Gita Chandan, if it's Amanza Walton Disease, whoever it is, or Aubrey Norton, I should be able to give an honest opinion to say, this is why I choose this person. That because of X, Y, and Z, and whether that is that will be able to have some influence in the voting of that person into office, then I will do that. This is not to say that I am against anyone. There is no personal reason for me to be against anyone. I just want to be able to share my opinion. Look, when Hillary Clinton was running, nobody knew about Barack Obama. He stepped out on the scene. People had already started to support Hillary Clinton. But when Barack Obama got into the race, they said, hey, wait a minute. I like Barack Obama, right? The same thing in 1991 when George Bush Sr. was running. He was two-term vice president. He won a first term as president. He was running for his second term. And people began to look and they say that it looks like George Bush Sr. is going to get this. Until that dark horse in the race, a governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton, stepped on the scene. That changed every single thing. Now, again, I'm saying there's nothing personal against anybody. Nothing personal against Mr. Aubrey Norton. All I'm saying is that when the race is called, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry, go. Yeah, no, you go ahead. Sorry.
No, when a date is set, and if there are other persons who are nominated and they are in the race, well, then it gives me a better position to formulate an opinion as to whom I believe should be the next leader. That's just my opinion, right? But I just want to be fair with everyone. I don't want out of some sort of emotion, because we need that sort of aggressive approach in confronting the PPP, to say that because Aubrey is aggressive, to just jump with Aubrey right now. Suppose there are two other persons who are far more aggressive than Aubrey, or probably those persons may have a track record of being in the trenches, being out there with the people, fighting for the people as well. Then where that leaves me, please, I don't want anybody to force me in a corner to say that I should support anybody at this point in time, because I'm not going to at this point in time.
And you speak your mind. I wish to acknowledge the presence in the comments thread of Nicole Cole, women's rights activist Nicole Cole.
Maybe Nicole should show her should throw her hat in the race.
And also, I know Nicole. I will bring Nicole Norman, very soon on the program.
Norman, I know Nicole to be a fighter. I know Nicole to be a straightforward individual. I know Nicole Cole to be a compassionate person. I know her to be a brave woman. And now, if there are women like Nicole Cole, or there are men like Nicole Cole who are in the race, trust me, I am for that person. But I need to see more persons in the race. It's democracy.
My good friend Asante Uchi, I don't know if I pronounced it. She said, Mark, when you were talking about prostitutes, remember Auntie Alo is listening you. I don't want to get involved with that. Mind you, I know Alo. I think Alo has a good heart. I think that's just my take on that, but we're here to talk about politics, and I'm not here to. But let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question before we go. Would you join a program with Freddie and Philip Bino next week on this on Voice?
I will say this. I just came back with my kids. We were out. We had a nice lunch, and Sundays are usually days to spend at least a little quality time with them, even though I do that a lot as well. And if it's in the interest of a nation, if it's in the interest of something that's beneficial, and not just for the sake of talking and gaffing, well, I'm in it for that. But I'm not just going to be in a show with Philip Bino or a Freddie Kissoon just for the heck of it. I'm not going to do that. What purpose does it serve to be on a show? I'm not putting down Mr. Bino or
once the topic is clear, you would be on.
But I think Philip and Freddie can make two good guests for you, and I can be in the audience just watching once I have some time. Hopefully, Bino wouldn't dig a little thing up on you and get angry with you. But I must admit that you have behaved very calm this evening in terms of your questioning. It shows that you're getting better. after the little views out by
Well,
Mino.
I am with the best. I am with the best tonight. Mark Benchop, it has been a pleasure having you
Thank
on
you
this
so
program.
much.
I'm honored. I'm honored to have you on this program. Thank you for being on this program. Thank you to my guests here on the program joining us and would have been joining us for the longest of time, even if there were 200 of them. I believe that we need to network as social media commentators. We need to connect with also the political parties in the opposition to network to get this thing going. But Mark, it is a pleasure. One love, much respect. The struggle is on. Thank you for being on the Voice of the Diaspora.
Thank you, sir.
The rebel in me can touch the rebel in you. I'm the rebel in you can touch a rebel in me. I'm the rebels within. It's gonna set us free. And it will bring out the rebel, bring out the rebel, bring out the rebel in me. Delivering you and touch the delivering I'm delivering me and touch the delivering you and delivers me will bring sweet harmony and it will bring out the love, bring out the love, bring out all the love in me. Is deeper than the ocean. Our love is in need of sweet devotion. Oh, because you got a potion, bring out the love in me, and I will bring out the love in you. Let the lover in you touch the lover in me, and the rebel in me will touch the rebel in you, and the lover's sweet.